Dexter Morgan is not an easy man to kill. He has faced off against men 3 times his size, sailed directly into a hurricane, and even been shot point blank in the chest, but still lived to tell the tale. But is there anyone that could have actually taken him down? Today, we are examining everyone from the series that could have killed Dexter, starting with his own sister, Deborah Morgan. Deborah Morgan was very attached to Dexter for almost all of her life. She looked up to him as a brother and a protector, despite the fact that they were not biological siblings. Dexter was someone she could look to when she faced hardships. There's even a point during her life that she thought she was in love with him as more than a brother. That shows how deeply Deborah cared for and felt connected to Dexter. But she eventually learned that he was the Bay Harbor Butcher, and that changed everything. She not only realized that she was not in love with him, but that she may actually hate him. Still, even after that, she allowed him to re-enter her life and took steps to keep him safe, undetected, and out of jail. But Dexter continued with his murderous ways, even after she learned what he was. And most of those actions caused her great anguish. Still, she kept protecting him, and even when Captain LaGuerta wanted to bring Dexter in, Deb stepped in the way.
Maria, what are you doing?
She intervened for her brother and lied to everyone she cared about to keep them from discovering that Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher. Deborah seemed to be willing to do anything for Dexter, but what if that wasn't the case? There was a pivotal moment in Deborah's life after Maria caught on to Dexter. Maria went after Dexter relentlessly once she had him pinned as the Butcher. She never truly accepted that it was Dokes in the first place. Instead, Maria wanted to explore every other avenue to confirm, if she could, that Dokes was innocent.
Maria's convinced that Dokes was innocent.
She eventually caught on to what Dexter was, and she wasn't willing to let it go, even if it cost her her job. Against all advice, she pursued Dexter and even tried to arrest him for what she thought he had done. In the interrogation following the arrest, Deborah continued defending Dexter and helped him paint Maria as a maniac who was willing to frame her brother if it meant clearing Dokes' name. But even after that, Maria would not back down. She kept trying to prove what she knew to be the truth. Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher. So after luring Dexter to kill one of the men that murdered his mother, Dexter felt the need to eliminate her. It went against part of his code to never hurt an innocent, but it fulfilled another part, don't get caught, so he lured Maria to him using the same men she used, Hector Estrada. And when she arrived, he sedated her and prepared to kill her like he had already done to so many other people. But Deb arrived in the nick of time. She tracked Maria's location to the shipping yard and cut off Dexter's plan. That gave Maria enough time to wake from her sedation and beg Deb to shoot Dexter. Maria screamed for Deb to put him down, and even Dexter dropped his weapons and opened himself up to be shot dead. But Deb shot Maria instead of Dexter. That is the moment that Deborah Morgan could have been the one to kill Dexter. He wasn't going to fight back. He loved Deb. Not only that, but Maria was pleading with her to do the right thing. Had Deb's conscience kicked in at that moment, she would have shot Dexter, not Maria, thus ending his life. That makes Deb one of the unique individuals in Dexter's world that could have killed him. But she wasn't the only one. Hannah McKay had plenty of motive and opportunity to kill Dexter. After they met in the course of a routine investigation, Dexter was able to deduce that Hannah was a killer in her own right. As a young girl, Hannah went on a killing spree with her then-boyfriend, Wayne Randall. He was quite a bit older than Hannah and stole her away one night when he needed to skip town. Together, the pair went on a crime spree, killing anyone that got in their way, and sometimes just because they felt like it. Because of her age at the time and her expert ability to manipulate, Hannah was able to get off with only a light sentence in juvenile detention. But even there, she was not done killing. After being abused by one of the counselors in the facility and receiving no help from the others, Hannah took matters into her own hands. She killed the abusive counselor herself with no witnesses other than her friend, Arlene Schramm. No one could prove that she was responsible, so she was still able to get out of juvie on her intended release date. From there, she went about her life as if nothing happened, while her former accomplice, Wayne, rotted in jail. He received a life sentence, as most killers do. She, on the other hand, re-entered society and eventually started her own flower business and greenhouse. It was there that she discovered her true modus operandi. She could grow plants that seemed harmless on their face, but in reality were deadly, just like her. Hannah would grow poisonous flora and use it to eliminate anyone who inconvenienced her anytime she wanted. So when Dexter discovered her true nature and verified that she was indeed a killer, he hunted her down and strapped her to his table like he would any other murderer he encountered. But for some reason that can only be explained by a nearly fatal attraction, Dexter chose not to kill her. He released her from the plastic, and rather than kill her as he planned, he had sex with her on the spot. After that, the two were nearly inseparable, and it wasn't until she targeted his sister that Dexter would change that. Deborah, though willing to defend and protect her brother, had no such interest in protecting Hannah McKay. Deb was dedicated to getting Hannah sent back to prison and wouldn't rest until she got her away from her brother. That was enough for Hannah to set her sights on Deb as her next victim. She was determined not to go back to prison, no matter the cost. But Dexter wouldn't allow that to happen. From the beginning of the series, Dexter was devoted to his sister. He killed his own biological brother, Brian Moser, the ice truck killer, to protect Deb. So Hannah had the wrong idea when she thought that Dexter would choose her over Deb. He got to the bottom of what happened to his sister after a mysterious car accident that neither of them could explain. It was Hannah. Hannah had drugged Deb and hoped that she would die in a car accident after passing out behind the wheel. But Deb survived, and both she and Dexter knew the truth. Hannah had targeted her. So Dexter turned over evidence that would put Hannah away. Deb happily took it, and together, they got Hannah rearrested. With that, Hannah had all the motive she needed to kill Dexter, but she didn't. It wouldn't have been the first time that she killed someone who tried to pin her down for her crimes. She had already tried to kill Deb for doing so, and before that, she murdered a writer named Sal Price. Sal Price was working on a book detailing the crime spree that Hannah and Wayne went on all those years ago. Knowing that it could get her put away again, Hannah poisoned Sal. She poisoned Deb, and that is exactly what she could have done to Dexter. Dexter constantly put himself in her presence, even after she went to prison. What's more is that she eventually broke out and went after Dexter and Deborah. She could have killed them both after she had them knocked out, but instead she just dumped Dexter on the side of the road. Hannah was in love with Dexter, and that is arguably the only reason he lived after she escaped prison. Hannah McKay was not the most beloved character in the series, and it may have had something to do with how manipulative and dangerous she was to Dexter. She posed one of the biggest threats to him, and only her affection for him paired with dumb luck can explain why she didn't take Dexter out. Dumb luck also saved Dexter from another person in his orbit, Sergeant Dokes. Unlike Hannah McKay, James Dokes had no love for Dexter. In fact, he hated him. Dexter always set off alarm bells in Dokes' head, as he was sort of a killer himself. He knew that there was something off about Dex from the moment they met. Everyone else seemed to buy Dexter's act, but not Dokes. Throughout the second season, Dokes tracked every move that Dexter made. He followed him from dusk till dawn, and he didn't try to hide it. He wanted Dexter to know that he was onto him and understand that he wouldn't let up until he found out what Dex was hiding. Unfortunately, we all know how that goes every single time. Dexter was able to shake Dokes for a little while by pretending to be a drug addict, but once Dokes discovered that was just another lie, he was more determined than ever to bring Dexter down. The final confrontation between Dokes and Dexter was a dramatic and deadly one. Dokes tracked Dexter to the cabin in the Everglades where he had just killed one of the men that murdered his mother. There, Dokes finally gathered the evidence to confirm that Dexter was the Bay Harbor butcher. He confronted Dexter as he was disposing of the body, but Dexter quickly turned the tables. He overpowered Dokes and locked him in a cage inside the cabin. Unlike Dexter's usual victims, Dokes was not a standard murderer, and under Harry's code, he didn't qualify to be killed. This created an internal conflict for Dexter, who felt that while he couldn't kill Dokes, releasing him would mean certain exposure. While he was being held captive, Dokes begged Dexter to do the right thing. He even offered to help Dexter turn himself in, hoping to salvage Dexter's sense of justice. Despite their rivalry, there was an odd sense of respect between the two men. Dokes saw through Dexter's lies, and Dexter admired Dokes' undying pursuit of the truth. But Dexter was still stuck in between a rock and a hard place as far as letting Dokes go was concerned. But before Dexter could make a decision one way or the other, his obsessive ex, Lila West, discovered the cabin. She knew that Dokes was a threat to Dexter, so she took matters into her own hands. Without Dexter's knowledge, Lila blew up the cabin with Dokes still trapped inside, killing him instantly. When Miami Metro Police found the remains, along with Dexter's planted blood slides and who they assumed was Dokes' final victim, they concluded that he must have been the Bay Harbor Butcher. The case was closed and Dexter walked free. But if Dokes had just silently crept up on Dexter that night on the pier as he was getting rid of his victim's body, things would have ended much differently. He could have shot Dexter in the back of the head or even just in the back, and that would have ended him then and there. Dokes was in a position to make sure that Dexter was dead, and he could have exposed him later, but instead he started a verbal altercation with Dexter, and that gave him enough time to plan and react. Dokes knew everything he needed to know about Dexter. After finding the slides in his apartment and the body bags near his boat, there was nothing else he needed to show to anyone to justify him killing Dexter on sight. One shot, and Dexter Morgan would have been gone forever. After all, Dokes was an excellent shot, unlike the last person who could have killed Dexter, his very own son. Dexter's relationship with his son was shaped by tragedy and shame, but also a very real love, which was very rare for Dexter. When Harrison was born, Dexter was given a false sense of hope. He had a new chance to connect with someone on a human level, a level untainted by the darkness that had defined his own life for so long. However, after the brutal murder of Harrison's mother, Rita, at the hands of the Trinity Killer, Dexter was left to be a single father, and everything changed. The new role as a widowed dad left Dexter feeling overwhelmed and ill-equipped. He tried to do what was right for his son. He even thought about leaving him with his sister Deborah. But ultimately, Dexter decided to raise Harrison himself and protect his son from unknown dangers that he knew Harrison would eventually encounter.
I am a good father. I am the right person, the only person who can and should raise my son.
Despite his best intentions, Dexter always kept a considerable emotional distance, afraid that his dark passenger might have been inherited by Harrison. He also worried that he might endanger his son through their physical proximity alone. As Harrison grew up, Dexter's secret life as a serial killer forced him into more lies and prolonged absences. This left Harrison to be raised by several others at times, including a couple of different nannies, and even the serial killer Dexter had started a relationship with, Hannah McKay. Dexter would go on to fake his own death and leave Harrison with Hannah, fearing that staying in his son's life would only lead to tragedy, and he wasn't completely wrong. Years after being abandoned and after his adoptive mother, Hannah's death, Harrison tracked his father down to a small town in New York known as Iron Lake, but he was still unaware of Dexter's dark past. The temporary reunion was very strained because Dexter had been living under a false identity, Jim Lindsay, while also trying to suppress his homicidal urges. He feared that reconnecting with Harrison might be unsafe for both of them, but he longed for that connection and redemption, causing him to admit that he was in fact Dexter Morgan, Harrison's father, and he agreed to let Harrison stay with him in Iron Lake. As they spent time together, Dexter began to suspect that Harrison had indeed inherited the darkness that plagued him all his life. This was evidenced by several angry outbursts on Harrison's part and even a staged attack on his classmate, Ethan. Rather than run from it or continue lying, Dexter decided to guide Harrison, offering him a code to direct his urges only against those who deserved punishment, just as Harry had taught him to do when he was a child. But this attempt to bond over a shared darkness and sense of justice failed. Harrison, while confused and damaged, still had a stronger moral compass than his father ever did or could have anticipated. When Harrison learned about Dexter's crimes, at first he was understanding, almost impressed even. But when he found out that Dexter had killed innocents and his actions led to irreversible collateral damage, like the death of his mother Rita and his Aunt Deb, Harrison was disgusted. The final straw came when Dexter killed Coach Logan, an innocent man, local officer, and Harrison's own wrestling coach. Dexter had killed Logan simply to keep himself from being caught. Harrison could no longer justify his father's actions. In a rather heartbreaking confrontation, Harrison raised a rifle at his father and demanded that he acknowledge what he had done. Dexter gave Harrison permission to shoot him, realizing that he had morphed into the very monster he once hunted. Harrison pulled the trigger, hitting Dexter in the chest and seemingly ending his father's life. This was a desperate attempt to break the cycle, find some inner peace, and move on with his life. He was told by the chief of police, Angela Bishop, to run from the town and never return. She was going to cover up the crime. That could have been Dexter's end, but he didn't die from the shot. Perhaps if Harrison had more experience with a gun, he would have killed his father that day. Alas, Dexter was rushed to the hospital and eventually resuscitated, which leads us into the upcoming show, Dexter Resurrection. Still, had Harrison aimed for the head or hit a major organ or just had the willingness and opportunity to take another shot, there would be no more Dexter. He is the last person in the series so far that has had the chance to put Dexter Morgan down permanently.